Hello everyone. Little bit deeper dive into some of the software I use for streaming and recording. The one I primarily use is OBS, Open Broadcasting Software. The biggest thing is it is just very capable for an open source program, because you can do all sorts of stuff from streaming to recording to setting up how you want your virtual webcam to look like in Zoom and Teams and other platforms. So let's have a look at the basics of this. So on the bottom right, you do have your scenes. A scene is a collection of pieces that when you go to that one, it'll do a transition much like that. And you can actually have some of the pieces where there's an eyeball to turn on and off pieces, turn on and off cameras, turn off different window captures as well as logos on and off. And you can group them, you can snap them together. Say for instance, if we look at my game stream, you'll notice I have a webcam group where the webcam and the overlay are tied together, so that if, interesting enough, if I move them, they stay together, which makes it really easy for a nice, neat little setup. So you have these, and of course you can set transitions between one scene and another. So a lot of people will do an intro, as you've seen many times in mine, as well as an outro. So you have your beginning and your end. And then I have, whether I'm playing around with game streaming, desktop recording, a cool place, which is something like, let's see, turn on the Brio, and turn on a background. So if you have a green screen set in behind you, you can actually do stuff like that. One for podcasts where I can see my audio moving back and forth. Some B-roll for where I'm pulling in additional footage. Let's jump back to cool this. How does this work? So if we look at, let's see, I need the Brio. Each thing will have a properties and a filter. When you look at properties, you can see what device is selected. So in this case, the webcam. You configure it, do different resolutions, and that kind of thing, depending on the camera. And you can even do configure, like if you needed to pan, tilt, and zoom to get it to fit inside the frames. But you can also do filters. And this is where I do a lot of pieces. On video stuff, the two I primarily use are chroma key and sharpen. Chroma key, you'll notice if I turn it off, you can see the green screen behind me. If not, whatever I put in behind me. And sharpen, I use pretty heavily with green screen because it keeps this edge looking really nice and clean. Now, let's look at game stream. I think that's where I have a lot more of my audio style modifications. So if we notice, let's actually take, you can actually rearrange an awful lot of stuff in here. Let's see if I can grab a hold of it. Okay, so now you can see a little bit more of the next pane. All of these are your audio sources, and you'll notice they jump around depending on which pane you have open. And you'll see these red marks. So I tend to mute everything except the ones I want. So like in a game, I would probably want the mic, and I'd probably want desktop audio. And you have a slider down below it where you can actually adjust the level. So to try, like, your intro is louder, which was the thing I ran into pretty heavily, but my mic wasn't as loud. So I turned down the intro and I turned up the mic. So you can kind of balance them out to try to make a flat line audio. Well, what happens when you want to get more complicated than that? You can actually go into, well, two parts, filters on it. And you'll notice I have a ton of filters on this particular setup. Noise suppression, EQ, and a lot of them have built-in pieces that I've set up ahead of time. Noise removal, which I think I'm not using currently, but a noise gate, compressors, limiters, and gain. And a lot of that is to lock my audio into certain changes so that it doesn't peak, it doesn't drop, it kind of keeps it neat and clean, as well as taking out some of the background noise like hum from a computer or hum from air conditioner or something in the background, as well as applying gain, or if my voice drops really low in certain spots, to be able to adjust it. Okay, so you saw one part there. That's on one source. You would need to do that for each and individual one. And you can copy filters from one to another, as well as you can actually go over here like to a source. You can copy it and then paste a reference or a duplicate into another scene. I do that a lot of times with my Baum Blog logos. So back to this. You saw there was an advanced audio features. This is kind of interesting. You can actually see which one I've quieted, which ones I've raised, offset if something has a delay, like it's coming in a capture card and you need to slow other things down to make sure your lips line up with what's coming in. So your offsets are here. Audio monitoring. This is something I do if I'm using mixed clips, like I want a little bit of live and a little bit of pre-recorded, because a lot of times if you play a video, you don't want it coming out your speakers and being captured by your mic and put back in. So a lot of times I will actually use my mic in front of me and set the monitor in OBS to my headphones, so I can put my headphones on, hear the things, and trigger the next steps. And you'll see monitor and output, monitor off, and I can kind of decide what's coming and going, as well as tracks to the side. This can be really, really useful with editing. And where this comes into play is track 1, track 2, anything you've got combined together. So a lot of times I want all my vocal on one, all my desktop audio on another, so that when I go to edit it, I can snip out pieces of each and levelize the two different pieces. Otherwise, if you put them all on all tracks, all the audio is together and you can't unmingle it when you are editing. Well, I should say it's really hard to unmingle it. Okay, so we've made it through the first main couple of panes. Along the sides, you do have transitions, and there are some default ones. You'll notice Block Blue that I've been playing around with is actually called a stinger. You can actually make custom transitions. That's something I've been playing around with to kind of see what I'm capable of. So down along the side, you have your transitions. Another thing of note is studio mode. And a lot of this is I could have the scene that I'm preparing to put on the screen and the scene that is on the screen. And I can slide it over. And then I could be like, I'm going to want this next. Slide it over. And you could do your transitions like if you were running back booth for a particular setup. You can also, for me, my most common is, as you've seen in my setup video, my OBS is on a side pane. But in order to keep me somewhat looking at the camera, you can right click up here and do a windowed projector. And you'll notice I can actually move this to another monitor, put it almost eye level with the camera so I can actually see myself, which makes me a lot more comfortable recording. Other than that, you'll notice there's a start virtual camera, which actually takes whatever is in your feed here and turns it into a virtual camera that Zoom or Teams, any of those could see. You could also do start replay buffer. This is kind of fun if you're doing anything live, like playing a game or something like that, and you want to be able to capture little snippets and replay some of that. So that's your replay buffer, and the longer you set the replay buffer for, the more memory because it's actually storing it in memory. So it'll actually, let's see if it'll show me. Should show us in settings. But that's kind of a cool one to play with. And you'll notice there's a start streaming and a start recording. So let's have a look through the settings. You have your general. I have mine set to automatically record when streaming, so I get a local copy of everything. Some basics, like of course mine's in dark mode just because I don't like the white kickback of the screen. I can control light a little bit better. But different things like how you have studio mode, multi-views, all of that. Pick a streaming platform. Of course, the one I've been playing around with is YouTube. So you get your stream key, you set yourself up, and away you go. Output. Here's kind of an interesting one. Streaming. highly suggest you have some kind of hardware encoder, whether it's an Intel, whether it's NVIDIA, AMD, something that can hardware-wise do your encoding. Otherwise, your CPU will be maxed out and you'll get stuttering. I actually would love to give an example of that, and I may do that in another video. But you'll notice you can rescale, you can do all sorts of stuff, target bit rates, how many audio tracks, all sorts of stuff like that. Recording. This is the one I use most often. Default save location. Again, running a hardware encoder. If I don't rescale, I push everything at default screen resolution, which for me is 1440p. You have your qualities, etc., etc. Audio, which track, what the bit rate is, what your replay buffer is, which I mentioned before. Mine I have enabled for 20 seconds, so I can catch the last 20 seconds. And that takes a half a gig of RAM to be able to pull off. Not too bad. Audio, 48 hertz. And here you can actually set your global audio devices, ones that go across all of your scenes. So for mine, my default desktop audio that is going to capture for what's playing back with games and videos and that kind of thing. And I, of course, have two of them because I want to make sure if I'm monitoring, I can switch over. Same with the mic. If I'm using a webcam or using the desktop, I actually should have a third one set on for that one, which is where my soundboard is actually connected. Advanced, this is your monitor, where you could set if you were monitoring audio and wanted to put it on, so you can do headphones. Interesting part here, Windows audio ducking. This is something you'll find in Windows, and there is kind of an equivalent to it in Mac, that if it sees like Zoom or communication software kick off, it'll actually lower the volume of everything else. This is something you can also do in your recording through those filters. That's kind of the basics of that video. And you can see my canvas size and output are the same. No big deal. I do record at 60 FPS because I think it produces a little cleaner because I use a green screen a lot of times. If you weren't using a green screen or playing games, you might be able to get away with 30. Hotkeys. These are some of the things of what I tie to some of the Stream Deck and other things, but you can start and control all sorts of stuff. Advanced. Basically the priority it gets in the CPU, your video, coloring, automatic reconnects, but for the most part I don't touch a lot of this unless you start having connection problems in streams. But that is the basics of, and of course you can create a new profile, but that's the basics of OBS, which means you can do some really cool stuff and have a lot of fun with it, whether it's just putting cool backgrounds like a video behind you, because you'll notice down here when you hit the plus button inside of a scene, display captures, game captures, image, media sources, text, VLC source, audio inputs, browser. So you could go find a live stream of the zoo and put it in behind you. You could do all sorts of stuff. So another one of those things that's get out there and have some fun with it and see what you can create.